Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
All right, today we want to talk a little bit about nourishing a spiritual life with our friend and, of course, Woman of the Year, licensed psychologist, author, Episcopal priest, and Reverend Dr. Bonnie Ring. Welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Gr-
really good.
Great to have you back here. For those who want to reach out, it's Dr. Bonnie, BONNIERING.com. And to start, just tell us a little bit about your background and all your experience. I know we need a few shows just to do that, but give us an overview and then we'll get to today's topic without ado.
Wonderful. I am many things at this point in my life. I am a psychologist and have been for almost 50 years. I provide psychotherapy to individuals, couples, and sometimes families. And I am also an author, and I wrote a book called Women Who Knew Jesus, about the different women in the Gospels that had encountered Jesus, and talk about his effect on them and their effect on him. And I've recently written my first children's book on Mary Magdalene because I think she's a wonderful role model. And I think that the children need to see that there were even bright and forceful women thousands of years ago, just as there are today. And then I am a retreat leader. And I am an adult educator. And let's see. I think those are the biggest things.
I think it's pretty impressive. There's a lot, and we've talked a lot the past few weeks as our honoree and all she's done as Woman of the Year. And today in particular, I know you kind of want to dive into this. Would you mind explaining?
I was thinking about it. I went to a conference, clergy conference last week, and we had a jazz band.
Ooh.
And I had never experienced a jazz music and liturgy worship. And, I'm not a big fan of jazz, but it was impossible not to be moved by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, both emotionally and physically. It's upbeat. It's soulful. It's designed to inspire.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a lot about that. And I thought, there are an awful lot of people today that don't go to church or synagogue or a mosque because they don't relate to the atmosphere that's there.
Yeah.
The atmosphere that's there is usually quite traditional and old-fashioned and not very contemporary. And it's not very personal. And so I started to think, well, what if that's what we experience and we turn away from it? What inspires us? And I realized that put the same person in a beautiful place in nature, and they will suddenly feel inspired and feel a kinship in the environment that they find themselves in. And so I never ask my clients whether they're religious or anti-religious. I let them tell me about their life experiences. And usually that's one of the things that comes up. When I was a little girl, we didn't have any religious practices in our home, but we did celebrate Christmas with a Christmas tree and presents and somebody that acted like Santa Claus to distribute the presents at family parties. And then you started guessing with your older cousins as to which uncle it was that was playing Santa Claus, and all your illusions about Santa Claus were suddenly destroyed because it was not real.
Mm-hmm. Oh. I have a 6 and 8-year-old. I'm getting close to that because last night it was all about his tooth coming out and the tooth fairy. And he said the tooth fairy doesn't exist. And I'm like, yes, she does. It's on that cusp, of believing and lying and not lying, but wanting them to believe for the innocence of a child. I get you.
I know. And I loved having a tooth fairy. it's such a big moment in a child's life when they lose their first tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And to be told to put it under your pillow and the tooth fairy will leave you a present, that's really, that's what a child can relate to.
Yeah.
But I do think we don't do a very good job when the disillusionment comes in to explain why we did it in the first place, and what things we like to believe in and what things we don't like to believe in. I'm what I call an extroverted thinker. Now, a lot of people don't know what the meaning of the word introversion and extroversion, but introversion is when you process things internally.
Mm-hmm.
And extroversion is when you process them externally. And although I am by nature quiet and an introvert, I think out loud.
Yeah.
And that's how I know what I think and what I feel, as long as there's somebody that's willing to listen and respond to me. So one of the things I encourage people to do when they come to see me, whether as a spiritual director or as a therapist, is to find out what matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
What values do they cherish? What values do they reject? What was their childhood experience like? When I was a teenager, my parents sent me to Sunday school, but they didn't go to the services.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent a double message.
Yes.
It's not worth our time, but you go.
But you have to. Ah, yes.
And it was strange. And the words of the prayers and the music didn't speak to me in the 50s. I mean, even in the 50s, we were much more modern than the churches and synagogues were. And so it wasn't until my high school class decided to study the roots of religion in their ancient history that we went on an overnight to a Roman Catholic convent.
Wow.
And I got there, and we were each given single rooms, little convent rooms with, just a single bed and a desk and a chair and a crucifix on every wall. And it was creepy. I mean, it was strange. It was something I had never experienced. And so I knew the first activity was to go to the chapel. So I went to the chapel. And when I got to the chapel, I saw there were kneelers, and I saw one of my classmates kneeling down, their hands folded. And so I imitated her. And when the priest started to talk, he said the following. He said, "God has been waiting for you to welcome you home."
Oh.
And I believed him. It was just, and what I learned years later was when I was a little girl, we had an Irish Catholic nanny. And occasionally she took us to church. And that was my first exposure. So when God was welcoming me home, I was back in the position that I knew to be worshipful. And I still like to kneel, and most people don't anymore, but I do, because it's my way of saying, okay, I'm going to plant myself with God.
Yeah.
And I do from time to time. So I thought it would be fun if we talk about our experiences, yours and mine, in being raised and in discovering our own values as we got older, and thinking about what is the most beautiful place in the universe for you. And I have two that come to my mind. So I'll share them, and I'll see what you have to say, Jill. The first beautiful place that I found was in Idaho.
Wow.
And I went into the Sawtooth Mountains camping. And when I woke up one morning, we climbed the mountain and we laid down at the very top. And I saw the sky and the mountain range and the sun. And I was just flabbergasted. It was so beautiful.
Mm.
And I have the same reaction when I went to Hawaii the first time. And I watched the waves come in, gently roll. And again, I thought, this is amazing.
Surreal.
This happens without anybody controlling it. It just happens. And it's beautiful. So for me, one of the things that inspires my spirit, I think, is beauty. Another thing that inspires my spirit is music. I'm not always indulged with jazz, but I love Baroque music. And I love to listen to it and be carried by it. So what about you?
Well, you got me thinking about the mountains, and it was my mom. My mom got sick with lung cancer in 2000. I guess she was diagnosed 2015. She passed in 2017. So what we did was, in 2016 we traveled. We did a lot of traveling while we could, and one of the places I brought her to was Arizona. We went to Scottsdale. She always wanted to go, and it's beautiful there. But what was really beautiful was the drive we took about 2.5 hours away to Sedona. And we have
Oh,
beautiful
yes.
pictures. I always see as it pops up on my memories on my phone of us, the beautiful red rocks, and like
Yes.
never seen anything like this before. It was just eye-opening, jaw-dropping. And it's just a memory I know she held very dear to her heart. I still do. And just so beautiful, serene, and just picturesque, where you feel like you're just in another world, and you feel calm, feel relaxed, you feel just out of this world. Yeah, it's beautiful. And the other, you mentioned the ocean, and I just love oceans in general. There isn't a particular time, but I feel the same way whether I'm in New York, in Long Island on the ocean, in California on the ocean, Florida. It just, there's something about the waves and the ocean that's magical, and that's why it's so expensive to live on the water.
True, true. One of the adjustments I've had to make as recently is I had a house facing the ocean in Moss Beach for 23 years. And I got so used to it, I didn't even see it some of the time. But every once in a while, it would take my breath away. And now I have to make a trip to the ocean if I want to see the ocean.
How far away are you now?
Oh, literally less than half a mile.
Oh gosh. All right. Still super close. Oh, that's
No,
beautiful.
it's very close. It's very close. I live on the same street as the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay.
Oh,
And
nice.
so the ocean is where the Ritz-Carlton is. So
Beautiful.
I can walk either way. There are two paths to get there. I can do that. So I'm wondering, as we talk, that when we feel inspired by beauty, we ask a question about who created this. And, there's the notion that there was a Big Bang and the earth was formed. No human or divine creator is necessary for some people. And for others, when you see beauty, it just says there's got to be something that's creating.
Yeah, has to be,
and,
right?
Then you can embrace it. And one of the things I remember about Sedona, and the red rocks were just
I know, right? Amazing,
beautiful. There's a Catholic church there.
Ooh.
In the red rocks.
Really?
That's exquisite. Just exquisite. It fits that environment. And I think that's one of the things that you see around the world, where they have created religious sites that are in beautiful places. One of the places I love is seeing the Sea of Galilee in Israel, because I can imagine Jesus on that beach, talking to people and encouraging them to believe in God. And I was lucky. I was invited to do this is one of my stories.
Okay.
I was invited to be the retreat leader of a program called Spirituality and Pilgrimage. And we went throughout the Holy Land. And when the day came to go to the Sea of Galilee beach, it was overcast. And I was very disappointed because it wasn't bright and beautiful and pretty. And I encouraged everybody to just wait. Let's see this if the sun rises, because it was quite early. And all of a sudden, when I lifted the bread to bless it, the sun came out.
Amazing.
And it was like magic. It was God saying, I'm here. I'm really here. And that was probably one of the most meaningful experiences of my life, going to the places that I had read about in the Bible and actually seeing them. And the River Jordan, we went into the River Jordan. We took our shoes off and we went into the River Jordan, and there were these little tiny fishies swimming in the water, and they were playful, and they touched our toes.
Oh my goodness!
And it was so these are the kinds of experiences.
These are the moments. Yeah,
they're just very special moments that nobody can tell you in advance they're going to experience. But when you do, you're saying to yourself, wow, isn't that special? Wow. So if you've had a wow experience, you might wonder, well, who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that people from the beginning of time have believed in gods and goddesses and divine creatures?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're still happening.
Yeah.
And what do I want to do about it? I think it's unfortunate. I'm part of a multi-faith clergy group.
Okay.
Here in Half Moon Bay, and all the churches have reported that they don't have any children that come to church. And it's like mommies and daddies get the baby baptized, and that's the end, if they do that.
Yeah.
And it's because when they go, they don't relate to what's happening there. And that's, I think, why I got excited about the jazz Eucharist. I learned that the first jazz Eucharist that was ever held was held at Grace Cathedral in 1965. Now, jazz has been around a lot longer than 1965. Grace Cathedral still has wonderful music. Mm-hmm. They do all kinds of concerts. They're going to do an electronic concert this December, which I'm looking forward to. Not because I know electronic music, but I want to see what happens. I want to see what impact it has on me and how I feel about it. I encourage people to clarify their values. And I think this is a very significant time in our country's history where there's so much hatred and there's so much disparagement of subgroups, whether they be minorities or gays and lesbians or trans people. Mm-hmm. And it's terribly important that we open ourselves to meeting others who are different and getting to know who they really are and dispelling some of the stereotypes that make us afraid and keep us distant. And I think those are spiritual values. They are part of what I think of when I think of nourishing your spiritual life.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Dr. Bonnie Ring, just remind us how we can reach you. And we still have 5 minutes left, but I just want to remind everyone. Thank you.
Oh, you can reach me by calling me at 650-560-8590. That's area code 650-560-8590. 90. Or you can contact me at my email address, which is dr, all lowercase, Dr. Bonnie Ring, Dr. Bonnie Ring at comcast.net. And I will answer. You can go to my website, drbonnieringsbooks.com, or you can go to womenwhoknewjesus.com or drbonniering.com, and you'll learn more about me. And I welcome your responses. I would love to hear from you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, we still have a few minutes left in closing today to share more about our discussion and our topic. What did you want to add to it?
Well, I wanted to add that I wrote a memoir during the pandemic. I had lots of time on my hands and I couldn't go anywhere like everybody else. So I started writing, and I started it with that experience at the convent, which was such an extraordinary awakening to me of feelings that I had that I didn't know were there. And when I was 18, or just before I was 18, I did become a Christian. I was baptized and confirmed. And women had no place in the church, in the Episcopal Church anyway, and certainly not in the Roman Catholic Church. And in a few denominations, but not many, in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. And I heard somebody speak about ministry in East Harlem when I was at college. I heard both the pastor speak, and then I heard a student speak about her summer there. And I thought, oh, that would be wonderful. So I looked up Investing Your Summer, and a little catalog that had all these church programs around the country. And I found 3 that were Episcopalian. One was at an Indian reservation in Arizona. One was on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And the third one was in the Chelsea area of Manhattan. I wrote all 3, invited myself to be on their staff. The Indian reservation was already full, and I didn't hear from the other 2. So somebody said to me, well, why don't you call them? Why don't you approach them? And I ended up spending the summer following my freshman year of college at the Lower East Side Mission of Trinity Parish, which had 2 chapels on Henry Street in the midst of the Lower East Side, which is a slum community. And I had never seen racism before. I had never seen poverty before. I had no contact with gangs before. But I saw all of that. And I saw people care about each other. And that just moved me to tears. I really was touched that when you went to coffee hour, somebody asked you how you were, and they were really ready to listen to whatever you had to say. And it was just an extraordinary experience. And one of the people that I met the following year was in the process of establishing and then established the Episcopal Society, which we ended up calling it the Episcopal Society for Cultural and Racial Unity. And that was 1959. That was before the sit-ins, before much of the bus boycotts, before voter registration in the South. And I got to spend the summer of 1960 in Atlanta, Georgia, helping this organization set up their office. My mother only wanted to do one thing before she gave her permission. She said, will you promise me you won't get arrested?
No,
I knew you'd like that, Jill.
That
I
was
just
great.
knew
Could
you'd like
you?
that.
No, yeah.
And of course I said, oh, I won't get arrested. I can do that. What I didn't know was that one of my roommates was going to be the secretary to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so whenever they had meetings in Atlanta, which is where they met, she invited me to come along. And when they had demonstrations, she invited me to come along. And most of the time, I was able to leave the scene when I saw the cops coming. But one time, we were talking about what could we do that would get attention, that wouldn't be a sit-in like lunch counters, but that would grab people emotionally. And I said, well, I know some of the things that what we ought to do is have kneel-ins and go to churches as interracial groups and desegregate them, because here in Atlanta, they're all either all black or they're all white. So we did that. And what I didn't know is when I came out of the cathedral that day with a black member of SNCC, there was a reporter there who asked us about our experiences. I thought it was just somebody, who had been in the congregation. And I got a call from my father, whose mother was very, very religious. And her brother had called her to say what a wonderful grandchild she had, because he read it in the New York Times.
Oh, wow.
Just a little tiny squibble,
Amazing. Yeah.
So, when Black Power was coined, I was basically thrown out of the civil rights movement. And I had to figure out what it was I wanted to be when I grew up, because I had really thought that what I wanted to do was help young people with their religious identities. And I changed my focus of my doctoral education, my graduate education, to learning all the ways that adults can grow and change and understand themselves better.
Amazing.
And then, of course, I got invited to be a psychologist when it wasn't part of my plan.
Wow.
That's my story.
Well, you got a great story and you're helping so many. Sorry, we're out of time. We went over. My goodness. Remind us how we can reach you, please.
Call me at 650-560-8590 or Dr. Bonnie Ring, drbonniering@comcast.net.
Awesome. Pleasure having you here and looking forward to speaking with you again. Thanks so much. Enjoy the beautiful weather. And wow, I got to come visit where you are. I got to check out that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Sounds beautiful. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.